Good evening or afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another weather forecast by Agent Weather Forecast. And it's going to be another update. Tomorrow is the 1st of December, and we have yet to have our first named storm for the winter season, but that is most likely going to change as we're looking at some more consistency between the global models for this upcoming major winter storm for the upper Great Lakes and as well portions of the Northeast. This is going to be another update on the overall new trends and models and as well the overall location total of snowfall. So if you guys are forecast to get hit by this, I would recommend you guys watch this videos as I'm going to be going into very great detail of this forecast, even though it's still a few days out, but still having some pretty high confidence. But before we get into the video, I would recommend you, if you guys are new to the channel and like my type of content, I would recommend you guys subscribe to the channel as well. If you are new, be sure to hit the bell icon so you guys can get notified as soon as I make a forecast. But without further ado, let's get in the video. So the first thing I want to go ahead and show you guys is the overall future conditions around a day or so ahead of the setup. So the day before the main storm is going to really develop and unfold across portions of the Canadian and U.S. border really on Saturday afternoon and evening. So we're going to be looking at really Saturday, really morning. So we're going to be kind of transitioning towards it, probably I'd say a decent, kind of more towards a positive EPO here in Eastern Pacific Oscillation. Basically what this means, we're going to be seeing some pretty intense friging all across the United States. So we're going to be seeing some really warm pattern as well. We're going to be kind of transitioning towards really, at this point, a positive Arctic Oscillation. We'll be seeing our coldest air really around the polar or circle, or the Arctic Circle in general, as well. We're going to be seeing a pretty zonal our polar vortex in general. So we're going to be seeing a lot of troughing over portions there. Greenland as well as some good troughing across Upper Canada as well as some good troughing as well, transitioning all the way to Siberia. So really it's going to allow for a really warm United States, at least for this pattern for the next few days. So it's going to be pretty warm. So you're probably wondering how is there going to be a snowstorm later this weekend into early next week. Well, this pattern is going to eventually change. So as we go kind of towards Saturday and then eventually into very early Sunday morning, this polar vortex is going to start to wobble. It's actually going to start weakening, which is going to allow a chance for this really cold area now to dip into the United States. And this is going to allow for some really intense transition in towards a positive Pacific North Oscillation here. So we're going to be seeing a pretty strong PNA pattern. We're going to be seeing as well some really intense ridging, just really not too far off the west United States. So it's going to allow for a really warm portion of the west United States, as well. Going to be seeing a dramatically cooling east central United States as well north central United States. Going to be seeing some really cold air moving in by Sunday afternoon. So this is actually going to allow for this cold air to be here to support this front. So we're going to be seeing a pretty large cold front associated with this system. However, this low pressure is going to be really fast moving as it's going to be acting like a clipper. So there is going to be one problem. It's going to be the timing of that cold air. This cold air is going to really stay to the west of this low pressure, but we're still going to be seeing that really cold air dip into the United States by Monday early morning. The area of low pressure at this point is going to be eventually somewhere here in the upper Great Lakes with that really cold air, really mainly across that cold air direction. And one conveyor belt is going to be obviously to the west of that low pressure, so it's going to be seeing some really deep freezes across the upper Midwest eventually. And as we go towards now Monday afternoon, this low pressure, at least in the GFS, is having shown as like a clipper and really going practically along the portions of Ontario and in Quebec. And the reason why they don't have it really going to the eastern coast is because we're going to be seeing some really strong ridging across the northwest Atlantic. That's actually going to allow for really warm weather and as well still some ridging across the eastern coast. So this low pressure in the GFS is actually going this way like a clipper, and it's going to really prevent from getting snow across New England. The reasoning for that is because we're going to be seeing a positive northern Atlantic oscillation. So we're going to be seeing some really intense troughing along Greenland, and that's going to allow for this troughing to be pretty close to the United States. So really warm pattern for overall much of the eastern coast, and that's what the GFS is showing. However, a few models like the European and CMC do have a lot less intense ridging off the eastern coast, so that's definitely something just to keep in close mind in. So that's why the Northeast, at least the coastal Northeast, isn't really a guarantee with this snowstorm, because really there's going to be really intense warm air prior toward this setup. So the question is, if this high pressure moves, and it is going to be favorable for this storm, is it going to be in time? Like, will it be too late after the storm, or once the front moves past? Because obviously it's going to have to happen rather quickly. and that low pressure would have, and that trough in general, that polar vortex would have to really dip pretty far into the United States to really be able to really push that ridge further eastward than it already is. But here's the overall pattern on Saturday morning. Going to be seeing, like I said, really intense ridging all across the United States. The only colder air we're going to be seeing is actually a small dip in the jet stream here across portion of the Northeast. Going to be seeing some really intense troughing as well. Overall, very cold there. But other than that, we're going to be seeing a very warm United States from coast to coast, practically really, really strong ridging all across the coast in general. That's because of that strong zonal polar vortex flow. But eventually, as we go towards early Sunday morning, we're going to start to see the resemblance. You can kind of tell there's a resemblance there. And there's that massive polar vortex, that very weak polar vortex now. And this is going to eventually, by early Monday morning, practically Sunday night, this cold is going to really invade the Pacific North, or not Pacific Northwest, but invade the West Central and invade portion of the Northern Plains. It's going to allow for this ridge to dramatically split. So we're going to kind of be seeing this blocking ridge at this point get split in half. So we're going to be seeing some ridging across the southwest and then some pretty intense ridging across the east central. So we're going to be seeing some really, really warm weather all across the eastern United States for the remaining of the week. However, it's going to be very, very cold at this point by Monday midday. It's going to be very cold. However, like I said, at this point by Monday afternoon, this low pressure is going to be somewhat around this point near the eastern Great Lakes, and you can still tell at this point we're still seeing dramatically warmer air across the eastern coast, still seeing around 17 to around 20 degrees above average, which is definitely not going to cut in for below freezing temperatures. And then of course areas behind that low pressure will be seeing some cooler air, not anything too mental. The most mental air will obviously be where that high pressure is. That's going to be seeing that really deep, dry, cold air. But along that cold front, it's going to be very warm. So it's definitely not looking too good for the coast Northeast, but it's looking pretty good for the Great Lakes as well portions of the upper Northeast, as there is going to be cold there, obviously, for portions of the upper Northeast, including the higher elevations on Monday. But of course, like I said, the East Coast is still going to be really, really warm because that ridge is not going to move out. And there you see the heart of that polar vortex is now moving eventually toward the northern central United States by Tuesday evening, seeing around 40 degrees below average. So like I said, this cold air is definitely, the worst of the cold air is definitely not going to arrive in time. However, there is going to be seeing some really, really cold air, especially compared to the pattern just the day before and then a day after. We're going to be seeing a completely different pattern, but the timing of this cold front is definitely going to be an issue, specifically the further east we go. Because obviously the averages are pretty cold enough for portions of upper Minnesota and as well the upper northern plains. But let's not go ahead and get a look here at the latest 12Z GFS. So we're going to have to go towards from Friday. So here's a look at Friday afternoon. Nothing too crazy again. It's some pretty intense ridging, so we're not going to be anything too crazy. It's going to be rather boring and dry United States. But as we go towards Friday afternoon, there's that area of low pressure now developing across the west central United States and along the Rockies. And of course, a lot of that snow is going to be pretty far north of that low pressure. We're not going to be seeing too much moisture associated with it, so we're not going to be seeing a lot of rain along this warm conveyor belt, but we are going to be seeing really, I'd say 50 to 100 miles north of that low pressure, where we're eventually going to be seeing some type of precipitation, and it's going to be because that cold front at this point is still going to be pretty far into the northern United States. So a lot of that snow is going to be front-based, so it's going to be acting like a clipper, and it's going to be very minimal for its snowfall totals because it's going to be so fast-moving. As we now go towards Sunday overnight into Sunday morning, the snow will eventually make its way towards portions of the North Dakota area and upper Midwest. It's going to be very, very not going to be super widespread once this storm actually unfolds because, again, there's going to be a lack of moisture. And the main cold front at this point is going to be pretty far west of this actual front itself. So a lot of that snow is going to be very isolated into look how far north that snow is, and that actual moisture is compared to the low pressure. That is really far north compared to that low pressure. So all of this is going to be where that cold air is. You can kind of see the high pressure itself already bringing that really cold air. So I see the area of actual cold air, the actual cold front itself is going to be pretty far behind that low pressure in general. So it's definitely going to be a pretty interesting setup, but some so good snow for Sunday over Sunday morning. As we now get in towards now Sunday portion there, mid-morning, eventually, and towards late morning, We're going to start to get a lot more moisture. We're going to be seeing now the snow, or this moisture in general, this increase in moisture going to allow for a lot more overall moisture along this area of low pressure. So we're going to be seeing the snow a lot closer to the actual area of low. But at this point, it's going to be really heavy snow across portions to the northeast of that low pressure. We're going to be seeing some really intense snow across the upper Great Lakes. Really including Wisconsin, upper Michigan, as well upstate Minnesota, and then eventually as we see some moisture advection finally from the Gulf of Mexico, we're going to be seeing some pretty heavy rain along the cold front. To the east of that cold front, we're going to be seeing that warmer air again, and still you see the ridging along the east coast, so it's bringing some really warm weather all across this area, and that's why a lot of this moisture, including Lake Erie and Lake Huron, is actually going to be rain because of how warm and how the effects of that ridge is so going to be felt. So a lot of the snow, according to at least what the GFS has been showing, is it's going to stay mainly out of the northeast United States and just be more towards the Midwest because of how warm it's still going to be felt across the eastern United States. So going to be seeing some really cold there. To the north of that low pressure, especially in the Ontario area and as well upper Great Lakes. So really high confidence for the upper panhandle of Michigan, upstate, really the overall upper Great Lakes. And as we go towards now Monday morning into the early afternoon, a lot of that snow is going to be staying at this point eventually towards far north of the northeast, and it's just going to be really heavy rain with some mountain snow. But other than that, it's going to be very minimal according to the GFS because of that ridging. Let's not go ahead and look at the European. So here's the European. Of course, as you go towards Saturday afternoon, there's that area of low pressure, and there's that snow stretching from the Sierras towards the upper northern plains. Going to be seeing that area of low pressure across central Montana, and then eventually, as we go towards now all through really Saturday night into Sunday morning, that snow's going to be traveling now eventually towards the northern plains and eventually into the Great Lakes by Sunday morning. Very heavy snow, of course, for the upper portion of Michigan, upper portion of Wisconsin, upper portion of Minnesota. And as we go towards now Sunday afternoon, it's going to stay that way, still pretty isolated across that higher portion of the upper Great Lakes, while we're going to be seeing that warmer air just to the east of that cold air advection, and that's where that warm conveyor belt is going to be. But the European is actually starting to trend a little bit more towards a CMC approach, where it's having some good snow across upstate or upper New England. And then by Monday early afternoon, still having some really good snow across portions of far northern, northeast, and as well upper New England. So still getting some really good snow eventually for the Great Lakes, including Lake Erie and Lake Huron, and as well getting some really good snow for upper New England like Mount Washington, Bangor, as well across Caribou, but still being mainly rain based in the United States because obviously it's still going to be pretty warm across the northeast and in the mid-Atlantic, but definitely going to be a lot colder. And there's that high pressure, that really cold area. You can see a lot of highs behind this, so it's going to be very dry but very cold. So we're going to be seeing some really dry and cold air pushing to the west. So a lot of this area northwest is going to be really cold snow, and then areas to the east and south is going to be pretty much warm, somewhat chilly rain, but obviously above freezing. And then last but not least, now look at the overall CMC model. They have definitely had, I'd say, at least an upward trend compared to the 0Z model that I looked at. It's definitely, I'd say, this 12Z updated uptrend. So here's the overall look at Saturday afternoon. There you see that snow across the Midwest. And then it really starts to amp up quickly by Sunday afternoon across the Great Lakes. Really heavy snow across Michigan, heavy snow across portions of southern Ontario, as well eventually getting towards the northeast, including now New York, and then getting some really heavy snow across Toronto, London. Very heavy snow all across. Like I said, really the main area to watch out is going to be the upper Great Lakes and some portions of the upper northeast. And when I mean by upper northeast is obviously the higher elevations along the Appalachian Trail as well. Those areas basically just that not really in the coast itself. So the CMC is still having a pretty intense confidence and really heavy snow all along the northeast, even getting closer to Boston, because the CMC does have this low pressure moving pretty far south, even actually off the coast itself. That's where that low pressure is going to be, while the GFS has it all the way up here. And that's the difference between the CMC and the GFS. But very heavy snow, and towards Sunday or Monday early morning, the overnight hours, where we're going to be seeing some cooler air. And there you see that really deep cold air. It's actually going to be a lot closer to the low pressure. So that's also why the CMC is having this being such a big snowmaker for the Northeast, while other malls are really not, and then it should move out by Monday afternoon. But I want to show you guys is the overall CMC approach, so you can tell that they have this Arctic blast and this polar vortex actually start to dip further towards the Northeast, while the GFS has it, of course, going kind of straight into the deep portion of the central United States, right in the spine of the United States. But the CMC in general has it really dipping to the northeast here, big dip in the jet stream, and that's where the area of trough is going to be. So that's a pretty big difference between the CMC and the GFS. Here's the overall snowfall totals for the 12D GFS update. It's actually some really intense snowfall totals. I mean, pretty intense snow all the way from portion of north central Montana all the way up, of course, and towards far beyond and towards Quebec. So going to be seeing some really intense snowfall, like I said, for the areas north of that low pressure. That's going to be involving the far upper Great Lakes, as well for portions of the far upper north central. So it's going to be including far northern North Dakota. We could definitely see probably over 2 feet of snow considering how heavy it's going to be, as well just overall how intense the area of low pressure is going to be and how cold that area is going to actually be felt. So obviously GFS not having really anything whatsoever for the northeast. You can say there's no additional accumulations, but definitely some really intense accumulations for the upper northeast. If we actually look now at the overall regions here, if we look at the upper Midwest, you can just see how intense these snowfall totals are. Actually, this actually loads for us. There we go. Gonna be seeing really intense snow, very into the more isolated areas. So it would have to definitely have to be more widespread. A little further south, like including Twin Cities, Madison, and even Detroit, to actually have a really good chance of being named. But overall, I still have confidence that this could possibly become winter storm, our first winter storm, which would be Atticus. But we'll be watching out of over 1.5 feet in some cases, getting close to 2 feet across far upper Michigan, far upper Wisconsin, far upper Minnesota, with watching out for a chance of some scattered snow across Green Bay, probably missing out of the Twin Cities, but overall still really intense snowfall. Let's now look at the overall European model. So they obviously have a little bit more snow involved across the northeast. You can kind of tell they are getting an additional few inches across the far upper northeast, including really more towards New England. But here's the overall totals for the European. Not as intense for North Dakota, not really as intense in general, but still getting a widespread area from Montana towards Michigan, getting a pretty big area of anywhere from 4 to 5 inches to as high as some areas just off the Great Lakes, getting over nearly a foot. So definitely watching out for some pretty intense snowfall in general for Montana and North Dakota, and then it's just really amp up by the Great Lakes. So we actually once again look at the upper Midwest. You can kind of tell it's a lot less intense, but it is slightly more widespread, and it is including now closer to the south. So it is including Chicago with a trace. It is including Detroit, and it is including just a lot more in general. As like I said, it's going to dip further. This area of low pressure is going to dip further south compared to the GFS, but looking at areas getting close to a foot, so it's going to be mainly in general anywhere from just under half a foot to just over half a foot, and then some cases, like I said, in the highest areas of the Great Lakes going to be seeing nearly maybe a foot, because that's where that area of steep low is actually going to be, and as well as where that coldest area is going to be. And here's the latest CMC. Like I said, I think it's going to be I think it's a little slightly more of an uptrend compared to the 0Z update last night, and it's definitely a lot more intense for portions of New England. But I believe it was yesterday, the 12Z actually had some really intense snowfall for coastal New England, like getting over like 1.5 feet. But obviously, like I said, that was very unlikely, and they are still showing some really intense snowfall like that, but more towards a European approach in those upper northeast areas. So here's the overall look at the upper Midwest for the CMC. Definitely not as intense, I'd say, as previous runs, but still seeing that consistency. We are starting to see that consistency across this general area. Or actually, let me just draw this real quick. This is the main area to watch out for. Like I said, this is where the highest confidence is going to be. Here, look at the GFS, the European, and the CMC. This is the main area to watch out for. So if you're in this area of circle, definitely have some high confidence that you guys will at least get anywhere from 3 to probably 3 inches to over a foot. And then we are going to be watching out for some of these areas. If this track does track lower, just depend on that polar vortex. These will also be areas to watch out for. But overall, here's what the CMC is showing, a little bit less intense. And then if we look at the northeast, of course, the northeast going to be seeing a lot more snow towards those higher elevations, of course. And the CMC is getting this trough really kind of dipping towards the northeast. It is favoring a lot colder air, so definitely a lot heavier snow, but definitely have to watch out for more consistency. But I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I will see you guys later. And then don't forget to subscribe and like.